That night, Takemichi immediately rushed to meet Hinata and invited her to go hang out in the city park. After releasing the longing by talking with her for some time, Takemichi and Hinata decided to return home. Before that, he asked her to go to the car park first while he would go to the toilet for a while. However, when Takemichi returned to the parking lot, he had to watch Hinata's car being hit by a car driven by Akun at high speed. Takemichi immediately approached Hinata, who was already seriously injured in the car. Unfortunately, he couldn't get her out because Hinata's legs were squeezed by the car's body. Takemichi immediately hugged Hinata tightly before he was finally thrown out of the car due to the car explosion. In the end, he feels very sad and angry because he again failed to save Hinata from death. Takemichi is determined to become the leader of the Tokyo Manji Gang so that he can change the composition of the gang leader and save Hinata. On the next day, Takemichi and Naoto met Draken, who by then had been a prisoner on death row. When Takemichi asks what caused Tokyo Manji's gang to turn into a criminal organization, Draken says that behind it all is Kisaki, and Draken hopes that in the past he could kill Kisaki. After knowing this, Takemichi goes back in time and intends to prevent Kisaki from joining Tokyo Manji. That night, Takemichi and the rest of Tokyo Manji gather for the inauguration ceremony of the new leader for Tokyo Manji's 3rd Division. Takemichi looked surprised when he found out that the person who was appointed as the 3rd Division head was Kisaki. All members of Tokyo Manji felt disappointed and angry with the decision, because Kisaki was very arrogant and was a former member of the Mobius Gang. But then, Mikey explained that soon, the Tokyo Manji Gang would face the Valhalla Gang, a gang bigger than Tokyo Manji, so they had to increase their strength to win the battle. Therefore, Mikey decided to appoint Kisaki as the head of the 3rd Division because Kisaki was the one who once united most of the youth in the Mobius Gang. In the middle of the explanation, Takemichi suddenly hit Kisaki, which made Takemichi almost beat up by Baji Keisuke, one of Tokyo Manji's top brass. Fortunately, it was prevented by Mitsuya, who immediately intervened and asked them to stop fighting. After that, Baji announced that from that day on, he would leave Tokyo Manji's gang and join the Valhalla Gang. After the division head inauguration ceremony was over, Mikey approached Takemichi and asked him to bring Baji back to the Tokyo Manji Gang because he is a very valuable friend to Mikey. Besides Draken, it turns out that Baji is also Mikey's friend, who he loves and cares about. He explains that Tokyo Manji was first founded by himself, Draken, Baji, Mitsuya, and Pachin, so they are all very important people to him. Hearing this, Takemichi agreed to his request to bring Baji back, but on the condition that Mikey had to get Kisaki out of Tokyo Manji. The next day, Takemichi finds a photo of the founders of Tokyo Manji, and discovers that in the photo is a young man that Mikey has never told about before. The young man in the photo is Hanemiya Kazutora, who is one of the members and top brass of the Valhalla Gang. The Valhalla Gang itself is a combination of former members of the Mobius Gang, including Han Masuji and the anti-Tokyo Manji group whose leader is still unknown. Kazutora is actually a co-founder of Tokyo Manji who is very close to Baji and very loyal to Mikey. But all that changed when a few years ago, Kazutora accidentally killed Mikey's older brother, Shinichiro Sano. Several years ago, Kazutora and Baji intended to steal a motorcycle from an auto shop as Mikey's birthday present. But without Kazutora and Baji knowing, the shop they were about to rob was the shop belonging to Mikey's older brother, and Kazutora, who didn't recognize the shop owner, immediately hit him from behind, which killed Mikey's older brother instantly. Kazutora looked shocked because he didn't expect that he would kill someone that night, and the incident immediately made him mentally shaken. Since then, Kazutora blamed all the incidents on Mikey for making him kill someone, and Kazutora also intends to take revenge on Mikey. A few days later, Takemichi accidentally met the vice chairman of Tokyo Manji's 1st Division named Matsuno Chifuyu. Matsuno then tells Takemichi the real reason Baji joined the Valhalla Gang was to kill Kisaki Tada, not to destroy Tokyo Manji. Takemichi and Matsuno then meet Mikey and Draken in front of Shinichiro's grave to tell them about Baji, and ask the reason why Tokyo Manji wants to fight with Valhalla. Mikey then said that although the fight with Valhalla later could not make his brother back to life, he still could not accept the death of his older brother who had been killed by Kazutora. After they leave Shinichiro's grave, Matsuno invites Takemichi to start investigating Kisaki's background together. Matsuno also said that he would help Takemichi to become one of the leaders in the Tokyo Manji division. They then immediately meet Osanai, the former leader of the Mobius Gang who once knew Kisaki. Osanai said that from the beginning, the fight between the Mobius Gang and the Tokyo Manji Gang had been planned by Kisaki. Kisaki deliberately inflames Pachin's anger by ganging up on his friends so that the Tokyo Manji Gang has a reason to attack the Mobius Gang. After a clash between the two gangs occurred and the Mobius gang lost, Kisaki blamed it all on Osanai and chose to approach Mikey. Kisaki tries to convince Mikey that he can help the Tokyo Manji gang by saying that he can help free Pachin. Kisaki intends to be able to occupy a strong position in Tokyo Manji, and he even plans to kill Draken in order to become the vice leader. With a feeling of fear, Osanai says that Kisaki is a cruel person who can kill others for his own benefit. Hearing his explanation, Matsuno concludes that the leader of Valhalla, who is still unknown to anyone, is Kisaki himself, and Kisaki deliberately infiltrated Tokyo Manji's gang to become a spy. After that, Takemichi returned to the future to meet Draken. He was very surprised to learn that the battle between the Tokyo Manji gang and the Valhalla gang would later be won by the Valhalla gang, and it would be Tokyo Manji's first defeat. After Valhalla's victory, a new Tokyo Manji gang will be formed, with the Valhalla gang as the core group. Kisaki will be the main leader, while Mikey will be the second chairman who will lead the members of the Tokyo Manji gang. Since then, the Tokyo Manji gang turned into a criminal organization under Kisaki's direction. Draken then explained that the defeat of the Tokyo Manji gang during the fight with the Valhalla gang was caused by Mikey, who had killed Kazutora. Hearing this, Takemichi concludes that Mikey killed Kazutora because Kazutora had killed Baji, so Takemichi must prevent Kazutora from killing Baji during the fight later. After going to the past, Takemichi and the rest of the Tokyo Manji members gathered at the Musashi Shrine. At the meeting, Mikey said that tomorrow, the Tokyo Manji gang will fight with the Valhalla gang, and Mikey will never tolerate any form of betrayal. Mikey also says that he actually doesn't want to fight against his own best friend, so he intends to bring Baji back after destroying the Valhalla gang in tomorrow's battle. On the next day, the fight between them finally begins, with the supervision of a member of the Ikebukuro clandestine criminal named Hansen. Not long after the battle rules were read, all members of each group started running and attacking each other. In that battle, Draken will fight against Han Masuji, while Mikey will fight against Kazutora. Meanwhile, Takemichi tries to fight every member of Valhalla in front of him so he can find Baji immediately. With the help of Matsuno behind Takemichi, the two of them would fight against several members of Valhalla who were attacking from various directions. But even though he has been helped by Matsuno, Takemichi still has trouble defeating the members of Valhalla who have a stronger physical strength than him. Tokyo Manji division chiefs such as Draken, Matsuno, and Mitsui can easily defeat any of their opponents, but they must protect the other Tokyo Manji members because the number of Valhalla members is far greater. Unfortunately, Valhalla members kept arriving, and Tokyo Manji members began to fall one by one, and some Tokyo Manji members also began to lose their spirits. In the midst of the crisis, Takemichi suddenly shouted very loudly to show his spirit, which was still burning even though he was very tired and almost fainted on Mitsuya's shoulder. Mitsuya is very impressed with the enthusiasm that he has, even though Takemichi does not have the fighting skills that are qualified like the other members of Tokyo Manji. Thanks to Takemichi's shout, all the members of Tokyo Manji who were on the verge of giving up finally got excited and determined to win this fight. Now Draken doesn't need to protect other members of Tokyo Manji and can focus on attacking Han Masuji. With one very hard hit, Draken can make him flung far and fall to the ground. On the other hand, Mikey was still chasing Kazutora, who ran towards the pile of cars, causing him to be surrounded by two other Valhalla members. Mikey was initially able to withstand the attacks, but after the three of them attacked Mikey along with an iron pipe, he fell unconscious, and Kazutora began announcing Mikey's defeat. Seeing this, Draken tried to save Mikey, but he was restrained by Han Masuji. Fortunately, Mikey regained his senses and immediately took advantage of the Valhalla members' negligence by kicking them all until they fell unconscious. Seeing Mikey, who was exhausted, Takemichi rushed over to him, but Kisaki and several members of the 1st Division had already saved Mikey. When Kisaki was on top of a pile of cars, Baji suddenly appeared and immediately kicked Kisaki until he fell to the ground. Draken and Mitsuya, who saw this, then asked Baji to stop attacking Kisaki, because they were doing all this fight in order to bring him back to Tokyo Manji. But Baji still insisted on beating Kisaki. He even hit Matsuno and Takemichi, who had prevented him from reaching Kisaki. Not long after, Kazutora suddenly appeared and immediately stabbed Baji with a knife. Fortunately, Takemichi had pushed Baji first and made Kazutora stab, only getting a few scratches. After that, Baji still insisted on defeating Kisaki alone, and he began to fight against dozens of Tokyo Manji members who were protecting Kisaki. After successfully defeating the other members of Tokyo Manji, Baji is finally able to approach Kisaki and intends to kill him using an iron pipe. But when he arrived in front of Kisaki, Baji suddenly fell and coughed up blood until he fell unconscious. It turned out that the previous stab wound was so deep and so severe that Baji was starting to get tired and lose a lot of blood. Takemichi realizes that all these incidents have gone according to Kisaki's wish, who intends to defeat Baji and make Mikey lose one of his best friends. Mikey, who saw Baji injured, became very angry with Kazutora and intended to defeat him. But when Mikey was about to approach Kazutora, Hanmasuji blocked him, so Mikey immediately attacked Hanmasuji with one hard kick until he fell unconscious. Most of the Valhalla members who saw that one of their leaders could be defeated so easily, immediately ran scared and left the car dump yard. When Mikey approached Kazutora, Baji suddenly got up and said that a stab wound inflicted by Kazutora could never kill him. He then stabbed his own body with a broken glass bottle until he fell helplessly. Matsuno, who saw this, immediately approached Baji to catch his body and asked why he was doing all this. Baji explains that Kisaki is actually an enemy to Tokyo Manji's gang, because Kisaki helped Mikey to free Pachin only to replace Pachin, another high-ranking Tokyo Manji. Before Baji died, he gave a message to Takemichi to continue to look after Mikey and the Tokyo Manji gang until the end. After that, Takemichi, while in tears, sneaked between Mikey and Kazutora to prevent their fight and asked Mikey to forgive Kazutora. He explains that Baji was willing to hurt himself so Mikey could forgive Kazutora and not kill him. After hearing his explanation, Mikey finally realized that Baji had been willing to sacrifice for the survival of the Tokyo Manji gang and protect all of his best friends from the destruction planned by Kisaki. Mikey finally apologized in front of Baji's helpless body for having deviated from the principles of Tokyo Manji's gang friendship. Shortly after, the sound of police sirens sounded, and all the remaining members of Valhalla started running away from the place. Mikey also ordered all other members of Tokyo Manji to leave the place immediately. Before Mikey and the others left, Kazutora bowed to Mikey and apologized to him for the death of his brother as well. Kazutora decided to stay in that place with Baji's body because he wanted to be responsible for Shinichiro and Baji's death for the rest of his life. The fight between the Valhalla gang and the Tokyo Manji gang that day was known as the Bloody Halloween Incident, with the Tokyo Manji gang as the victors of the fight. A few days later, all members of Tokyo Manji held a meeting at the Musashi Shrine. That night, Mikey announced that the Valhalla gang would join the Tokyo Manji gang, because Hanmasuji said that from the start, the Valhalla gang did not have an official leader. That means Hanmasuji has betrayed Kisaki and chose to join Mikey. At the same meeting, Mikey decides to appoint Takemichi as the head of the first division of the Tokyo Manji gang. Thus, Takemichi can still change the future of Tokyo Manji and get rid of Kisaki in the future so that he can save Hinata from death. The anime ends. This anime teaches us that we must continue to fight to be able to protect and look after the people we love, and every effort we make will definitely bring us closer to the goals we want.